Oh, timing. Well, today I'm not at my modelling bench with a modelling project for you. I'm in London, and that over there is Charing Cross railway station. And the reason I'm here is, if you listen to any of the podcasts that I do, I've mentioned before that the reason I became a projectionist was because I had crap career advice when I was at school. I sat down with the careers advisor who said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to work in special effects, in film and TV special effects, especially model work. And the careers officer, showing spectacular lack of imagination, couldn't recommend art college or anything logical, and just sort of like mumbled, well, learn electronics. That might be useful. And me being the meek little boy that I was, I went along with it, and therefore wasted 3 years of my life getting on the train each day and travelling to college, learning about industrial electronics and TV and radio servicing. Would you believe? City and Guilds, no less. So so wasted 3 years of my life. This guy thinks I'm filming him. I'm really not. Please go away. So wasted 3 years of my life, right? But there was a bit of a bonus to it, and that is that shortly after starting, I had pegged that the train I was on, if I didn't get off it, it went up here to Charing Cross. And Fridays was maths day, so I just stayed on the train and got off at Charing Cross and got out here. And the reason I started doing that was because of the lovely Starburst magazine. This is issue number 3, so this is the earliest time there was an advert, but the advert was for this, right? Dark They Were and Golden-Eyed, the largest science fiction bookshop in the world. I don't know if that was true. I'm sure, especially in America, there were bigger ones. But that's what I used to do. I used to bunk off college, come up here every couple of weeks, and wander up through London and go and pay it a visit. So I'm back. Today I'm going to go back, and I'm retracing my steps of my early Fanboy days. And I'm going to chart it on video, and along the ways just mention other little things maybe of interest to you. Certainly were to me. So let's get going. Right, first little snippet is that a few years ago I interviewed Kenneth Colley, who played Admiral Piet in the original Star Wars trilogy, and he told me that he became an actor by coming down from Manchester to London, came here to Charing Cross, went to a telephone box over there outside, he said, and which had a yellow pages, opened it up at agents, got a pin and just stuck it in, and phoned up the agent at random, who was an agent in Wardour Street, where we're going to be going soon. So I just thought I'd mention that. Right, so that is the church that I was just sat outside, and I remember in the 80s where I literally was just sitting, there's a crypt, and they renovated it, whatever you do to a crypt, and they made it into a communal space and a cafe and stuff like that. And I know that there was a lot of controversy at the time because there were a lot of Black Death victims buried there. But anyway, that's another little aside for you. So that's Charing Cross there. This is the church, right? And round there, up there, behind that tree, that's Nelson's Column, because this is Trafalgar Square. I do apologise for the noise. And that is the National Portrait Gallery. And this church is St Martin's in the Fields. I'm going to keep moving because I'm being looked at. This is St Martin's in the Fields Church, and what is interesting about that, at least to me, is it's called St Martin's in the Fields. I hope you can hear me, by the way. It's called St Martin's in the Fields because up until the Middle Ages, this whole area, everywhere we are now, wasn't like this. It was fields. This church literally was in the fields. Look, you see over there, we're going to the sign, St Martin in the Fields. And that's because up until the Middle Ages, London was the old Roman London, which is to the east, down that way. And it's still called the City of London. That's the financial district of London now. And of course, London expanded over the centuries. But yeah, in the time of Henry VIII, this was all fields around here. So where we're going now, this is the bottom of Charing Cross Road, and the little 16-year-old me would have come past the church here and would have gone up that way. I'll be in a quieter place soon. So that's the back of the National Portrait Gallery, and now I'm in Charing Cross Road, which you'll see more of later. But when I was a spotty youth and came along here, I would have gone through there. All right, that was an alleyway back then in the late 70s. But it is no more, and that's because behind this bank is the Odeon Leicester Square, and sometime in the 80s, 90s, they built a mezzanine level up there, and this is the fire escapes from it. So end of shortcut into Leicester Square, which is where we're just about to go. Much quieter now because we're in Leicester Square, which is a pedestrian area. So of course that is the world famous Odeon Leicester Square, and right next to it, down there, where I might go in a minute, is the not so famous Moon Underwater pub, which used to be a cinema back in the 1920s, would you believe? It was a very narrow, very long cinema, and is known, at least in England, as the Projectionist pub, because that's whenever there was a meet, we would all go into the Moon Underwater. And also, I mean, this is where, if you listen to our I just realised there's Batman on the roof. If you listen to our Aliens in Character podcast, this is where I came along to a press screening, and me and other Ian had to run from here down exactly the way we've just come from, leg it right the way down past Charing Cross, down to the Embankment Underground station, to then only come back on ourselves. Bloody idiots that we were. So that's the Odeon Leicester Square. In later years, when I become chief projectionist, every Christmas there'll be a Christmas party for the BKSTS, which is the British Kinematograph Society, and was most of the time was held in the basement down here, which was baking hot, but all the beer was free, so we didn't mind. So yeah, that's the Odeon Leicester Square. This area's had radical changes in the last few years. They've pulled down the Warner West End over there, and I think Panton Street's gone as well. That's a hotel now with a nod to cinema. The old Swiss Centre has been pulled down and is a monument to M&M's, would you believe? The Empire Cinema is still here, although they've gutted the inside. The outside, I think, is listed quite rightly, but they've gutted the inside and multiplexed it basically. Over there you've got the View, which is unchanged, and just there, can you just see, just tucked around the corner, is the old Hippodrome, which has been many things in its time. All right, so yeah, I think I might go and have a pint in the Moon Underwater. A few years ago, Matt and Christy from Neozaz, they came over and spent a week in London, and that was our watering hole. So yeah, I think I'm going to pop in and see if I can have a pint for you too. Okay. So I've come out of Leicester Square, that's the Odeon, and I'm now at the Prince Charles, all right, which is the cinema in the West End for cult films. I mean, look at the lineup we've got on at the moment. Yeah, and it became the independent cult film cinema after the Scala up at King's Cross closed down, because I think they were taken to court for showing banned films in the UK. So I've been to a couple of these all-nighters where it would like start at 7 at night and finish at 7 in the morning, and after each film you were just desperate for coffee to keep awake. My abiding memory is the prints were always awful, but that kind of like added to the charm of it. Last time I saw the chief here, she still had a couple of 35mm, but they'd switched completely over to digital, so this is why I think you get the likes of Cher now, and Wall-E and the Paul Schrader films, you know, just put the Blu-ray on. Right, okay, we're going that way now into Chinatown. So this is Chinatown. I'm just coming out of it, and in a minute I'm going to just compare, you know, the West End of now to the West End of then. But we're coming up to Shaftesbury Avenue, where I'm going to go down a little bit, and then I'm going up another famous road. This is Shaftesbury Avenue, which is sort of like, you know, the main part of showbiz and Theatreland. You've got theatres going down there and down there and up there, sorry. So I'm in Wardour Street, which for most of the 20th century housed the head offices of most cinema companies. All the international cinema companies were here, and I'd walk up here and you'd see the stills for the upcoming films like from 20th Century Fox and Warner Brothers and Paramount. All gone now, I think pretty much all gone, but the legacy is still there. Behind there you've got Screen House, that's still called Screen House. Down there you've got Cinema House, and of course there you've got Hammer House. And when I was coming up and down here in the 70s, Hammer, even though they were pretty much on their knees and dead, they still had a presence there. Hammer Films was still there. So I'm going up there and we're nearly there. So that's timing. That's my destination down there, that alleyway, St Anne's Court. I haven't been down there for over 40 years, so this is going to be interesting. But before I go down there, just a little word that back in the late 70s, they hadn't started to clean up Soho, and Soho was not a nice place. There were dodgy, how can I politely put it, dodgy shops. You had dirty bookshops, you had strip joints, you had, well, whatever polite term that you can think for knocking shops and what have you, all right? And yeah, it wasn't a savoury place to visit. It's all been cleaned up now, and you know, it's pretty okay, although there's a couple of nods every so often to its heritage. But I haven't been down there for over 40 years, so it's going to be quite interesting to see what it looks like now and how I feel going down there. It's quite amazing. I come up the alleyway from that direction, and immediately I had flashbacks to some of those dodgy shops. So this is it. This is the Mecca. This was Dark They Were and Golden Eyed. Oh, there's me in there, look. Hello. Yeah, this was Dark They Were and Golden Eyed. It was a big shop, went all the way along there. I think it was 2 levels. I think it had a basement. My abiding memory is all they sold was comics. You might get the odd Starburst or something like that. And it was manned by old hippies, but it was fabulous. It was the only place I knew where I could go and buy comics and, you know, not be berated for it. So it's really good. Now I'll bid that goodbye, and we're going to go heading towards Soho Square now. The other thing is some of these dirty bookshops, they were pawn shops, but to get a trading license they had to sell books. And so they had to have books, and I'd cottoned on quite quickly that outside there were boxes, cardboard boxes of old second-hand science fiction paperbacks. So yes, I will admit I frequented said dirty bookshops, and yeah, but I didn't partake of the smut. I was partaking of the sci-fi. So we're in Dean Street now, and we're just about to go into Soho Square, and then we're going to go to somewhere you might know or recognise. I seem to have stumbled onto a high-vis convention over there. So this is Soho Square, which is a lovely square, but an awful lot of it isn't what it seems. A lot of this looks old, but it's not. It's really rather modern. It's just been done in an old style. All right, so I'm now going to go this way. I'm heading back towards Charing Cross Road, and the reason for that is, as much as I loved Dark They Were and Golden Eyed, they didn't last long. I think they only lasted like a year after I started going there. It wasn't my fault, Gov. It was the fault of a comic book shop that opened in 1978. A tiny little shop you might not have heard of called Forbidden Planet. And yeah, better located, just off the Charing Cross Road. I don't think Dark They Were and Golden Eyed stood a chance. So it closed, and that became my comic book shop of choice. So we're going to go there. Before I leave the convention, I'll just say that in the last couple of years, when you had projectionists and therefore Christmas parties, the Christmas party was held over there in Dolby House. which was rather nice. And that's where I harangued and harassed Mark Commode and drunkenly expressed my love of, our shared love of silent running. I wish I'd filmed that, it would have been brilliant. Up there is Centre Point. Okay, if you're ever lost in the West End of London, just find either Centre Point or the Post Office Tower. This was crashed into in the rather, you know, it's just an ouch film now, the Medusa Touch, where a jumbo jet flies into it. I think it's been converted into apartments now. Back in the 60s when they built it, it was considered an eyesore, but now it's, you know, got it's a listed building. I think it's rather lovely, and I always liked seeing that because it meant I was nearly at my place. We're back to the noise because that there is Oxford Street. That's New Oxford Street. That's Charing Cross Road. We're at the top of Charing Cross Road, and that's Tottenham Court Road. And that there is the Dominion Theatre. All right. Now, back in my day, that was a cinema. It's a live theatre now. But this is where I come with a fellow projectionist called Mark. We came up to see Return of the Jedi here in 1983, because back in 1983, I'm being upstage. I'll keep moving. Yeah, back in '83, they were still doing the thing where cinema releases were in London and the big cities, and you had to wait a couple of months. So even though we were projectionists, that's Charing Cross Road, by the way. We're at the top. That's Centre Point. So yeah, rather than wait a couple of months until we could show it, we came up here, and my abiding memory of seeing it there was just the crushing disappointment. We both came out rather stunned as to what we had just seen. We were expecting, you know, Empire Strikes Back Part 2, and we got the Muppet Show. And yeah, I think we went to the pub and got very, very depressed. So yeah, I'm walking down Charing Cross Road now, and I'm going to hang a left in a minute, and we'll be at our next destination. Well, that's knackered my plans. They've got bloody great roadworks going on down there. So here we are. This is Denmark Street, and if you know anything about music, you'll know the heritage of this road. It's a very short road. It doesn't even get to where that orange building is down there. But it's old. It's like 17th century, and it started off. It had buildings to support St Giles's Church, which is just round the corner. But in the 1920s, there was an industry of printing sheet music here, and that developed. And for the rest of the 20th century, this was music shops and recording studios. And the heritage is just amazing. Just Google Denmark Street history, and you know, you had recording studios here where you had the likes of the Rolling Stones recorded here, The Who, Kate Bush recorded here. Hang on a second, I'm going to have to move down. Jimi Hendrix used to buy his guitars here. David Bowie, he used to, I think he worked in a cafe down here for a while, and then he was using the recording studio, so quite a heritage. Excuse me. I didn't know any of this was going to be here. Where I'm going for is that grey building there. Oh. Well, it's kind of apt, because this is the original Forbidden Planet shop was here. Just one level. That was the door in, as it still is. Then you had another door going in. They put another wall in. That wasn't there in there before. And it was just one level. You had the comics at the back. You had the film and TV stuff at the front. And I loved it. I came up here like fortnightly and met Mark Hamill here. There was an Empire Strikes Back sign-in in here. And there was about, 30 people outside. You didn't have to pay to get in. You didn't have to buy anything. So yeah, met Mark Hamill, Dave Prowse, Gary Kurtz, Peter Mayhew. They were all here. Went to lots of signings for the 2000 AD creators. I can remember, you know, they sold Brian Bolland and Mike McMahon artwork in there for like £20 a page. which everybody who ever came to this shop bitterly regrets not snapping up, because you know they're hundreds if not thousands of pounds now. So that's the original one. I'll tell you what, it's really good. You know, everywhere's coming back now. We're coming out of COVID, but it does make me self-conscious. I thought the West End might be a bit quieter. Anyway, that's St Giles in the Fields Church, and that was Forbidden Planet 1. Hang on a second, I'm getting looks. I'll just go around the corner. Blimey, this has all been redeveloped. That wasn't there before. Centre Point again, so you can't miss it. One of these shops here, wasn't that one, might have been that one, was Forbidden Planet 2. Forbidden Planet started off as just a little comic shop, smaller than they were in Golden-Eyed, but it expanded due to, you know, the entrepreneur skills of Nick Landau and the others. It expanded, and the first expansion before they went global was to open up Forbidden Planet 2. So the one around the corner stayed comics, and then Forbidden Planet 2, I think it's either that one or that one. I've got a nice photo from Hellraiser where they had the dead body, the maggot-ridden body, would you believe? They just had it in the window. I'll put that on Facebook. Yeah, that was the film and TV one, and that's where Alan Jones used to sometimes work, and I used to be quite friendly with Alan Jones, and he was the one who would give me free tickets to the press screenings, which is how come me and other Ian went down to see, you know, Aliens and RoboCop, Star Trek 4, you know, and that was here. And then they got bigger and bigger, they had to move, and they went round to New Oxford Street, which is behind that building, and I don't know how the bloody hell you get behind there, so I'm not going to go there. New Oxford Street is horrible, and that's when Forbidden Planet became a supermarket, basically. It was a big old shop, completely cold and clinical, 2 levels, and it was like a supermarket. Lost all its charm. So I'm going to go, actually, having said all that, I'm going to go to the latest incarnation of Forbidden Planet and do a bit of shopping. So that's St Giles, okay. The other thing to say before I go off down this way is that up until, what, mid-Victorian times, everything behind here, hang on a second, was a massive slum area, and called a rookery. And if you've watched any films on Oliver Twist, where Fagin lived, that incredibly moody, horrible, run-down slum area, was a rookery. And so, yeah, all the way down through here was the rookery. And it was all pulled down. They did a slum clearance, and the old buildings that are here now, like these, by the way, I think these doors are so huge because this is something to do with Theatreland. It's something to do with, you know, the flats, you know, the hanging artwork. That was for getting them in and out. So all these buildings are late Victorian, okay? Everything before that was all pulled down. Stage door, see? We're right by the theatres. I forgot to say when I was showing you the Dominion Theatre that before it was built there was a brewery on the site, and it was a, you know, 4 or 5 story height building, much like that one over there. And there was an infamous moment when the beer barrels exploded on the top floor, which made another one explode, and resulting in this torrent of beer which came down into this area, flooded through the streets, went down into people's basements, and people were actually drowned in beer. Yeah, just thought I'd mention that. Well, that was a disappointment. Didn't get anything. Usually in there, you can rely on them having some bargain things, sign things, or you know, reduce things. All the things that were reduced that I wanted were either I've either got them already, or were really scuffed, so didn't bother. Right, so I'm now walking down Shaftesbury Avenue, which will reach a junction in a minute with Charing Cross Road, and after that I've got one more thing to show you today. But recently, on Effectively Speaking, I had an interview with Steve Howarth, And when I said I had to come up from Kent to London to see Moon, it was that one, the Odeon there, all right? And yeah, as I said on that show, I think that was the first time I ever saw digital projection. I went up to see it, came here, ads and trailers were digital. Pin sharp focus, brilliant sound. My first ever experience. Then the feature came on and it was 35mm and it was scratch to buggery. And if you're an ex-projectionist, if you see a scratch, you can't keep your eye off it, even if it's absolutely nothing to do with you. So yes, as mentioned on Effectively Speaking. I'll come back in a second. Oh yeah, I forgot to say, when Christy and Matt were here, we were walking just back down there along Shaftesbury Avenue and we saw Christopher Eccleston. And Christy, being a big new Who fan, got rather excited, and but he was giving us such a look of "Don't you dare approach me." We carried on going. So that's the big Harry Potter show over there. I was going to go that way towards Piccadilly Circus, but I've got one more thing of interest to my left, and then we'll be back for that. Right, I'm in Seven Dials, all right, which is an area directly behind the hustle and bustle of Shaftesbury Avenue, and I'm just about to go in that blue awning shop, Neil's Yard Dairy, to get my sister some cheese, right? But that's not why I'm here for you. I can't really go down there. All right. This is Neil's Yard, and I'm not going to go in there because just round that corner there, you've got lots of cafes and I'm going to be stared at. But you see, can you see those blue windows up there behind that green bracer thing? In the 70s, they were offices used by the Monty Pythons, so thought you might be interested in that. There's a much better shot of the theatre for you. Right, I'm going back down Charing Cross Road now. There was a famous shop down here, 84 Charing Cross Road, and it's turned into a film with Anne Bancroft and Anthony Hopkins, and the shop itself, I don't know if I'm near 84, I think it was somewhere down this bit of the street. Yeah, no, I went to the royal premiere of it. My manager got free tickets to the premiere. He didn't want to go, so he gave them to me. So yeah, I came up here, walked down the red carpet. All the reporters and that, and the photographers are all like, who's that, and promptly ignored me. So who was the royals? Oh, it was Princess Diana and the Queen Mother. Yeah, that kind of like puts it in the time frame. Just trying to see, I can't see any shop numbers. Anyway, I'm off to Piccadilly Circus, and I've got one last thing to show you. So if you listen to our Alien in Character podcast, when we featured aliens for the first time, I said about how me and other Ian, we went to the Odeon Leicester Square, which is over there, to see aliens, and then we had to peg it out of there, down past Charing Cross station, down onto the underground, all the way to Victoria bus station to catch a bus. Only just made it, came back, this is late at night, last bus back, totally exhausted, come back, and that building there, at the time, was Tower Records, and as we came past pretty much where that white bus is now, all in that window there were the costumes and the props from Aliens. We'd taken cameras up on that day to take photos because the day before had been the proper release and they were all in the Odeon Leicester Square, and we were a bit disappointed by that, but yeah, we come back here all sweaty, and for about 2 seconds we saw them in there. All right, so that's that. The other thing is, I've got to go this way now. Right, can you see me in there? I'm on hallowed ground now. I'm definitely on hallowed ground if you're a fan of An American Werewolf in London, because back then when they filmed it, this was the porno theatre. that David has his final transformation and he breaks out, and we have the chaos that unfolds on Piccadilly Circus. I still can't believe John Landis got the police to fence it all off and do all that. So yeah, that was there. All right, and with that we're pretty much done. You know, talking of you know, the porno cinema and everything like that, all this area, all the way going up here up towards Oxford Street, it was full of them. It was full of these like horrible, grotty, dodgy porno cinemas. I mean, when we would show a film of that type, they were always scratched to pieces because you know, they weren't projectionists. So yeah, I mean, my abiding memory of that time that I'm trying to revisit today is just grottiness, and in that grottiness you had the fantasy and science fiction that I was craving. So London's much better now, much cleaned up. Our youngest daughter's talking about coming up soon with her friend, and I've got no worries about that at all. London has changed for the better. It's just a shame the shops aren't more, you know, customer friendly and less of a business enterprise. And with that I'm done. Yes, so yeah, thanks for bearing with me if you've managed to get to the end of it. I hope you found something in it interesting.